Hi, today we're going to be talking about Framing and the Adventures of Beekle, the Unimaginary Friend by Dan Santat. Framing is this idea of creating boundaries or borders between the story and the real world, or breaking those boundaries within that. There are frames around and within stories. There are things called full bleeds versus borders. Different types of frames can help the reader to view and seclude different ideas, which we'll talk about a little more in depth. It can connect and separate text from the images that are being shown. And it can break many borders. There are several different types of frames that are often used. There are decorative, there's within image frames called salients. There are framing across the pictures and separating text and visual. And we'll talk about each one of those through the duration of looking at the story. So if you haven't read this story, it's about Beekle, who is the imaginary friend, and he's not being imagined by a real child, and he then decides to go on the journey to find a friend. Instead of being imagined, he goes out to make himself be imagined. It is really awesome. It's really beautiful. If you get the chance to read it, you should. So we're going to go a little more in depth about framing. So to begin, we're going to look at this page. This is what we would refer to as a full bleed. They're from corner to corner to corner to corner. The image is covering all parts. It's a full bleed because there's not a single boundary between me, the reader, and the storybook. It allows full access. That would be the same thing with like this jacket cover. There is no boundaries. Beekle is really inviting you in to go on the adventure with him. Just like this page, it is allowing the reader to step in and really get involved. There's no boundaries, there's no separation. The next image we're going to look at is this image. So as you can see here, it doesn't look like there's very much framing. It doesn't look like the picture is divided up or cut up. But if you zoom in here on Beekle, who is working on building a ship, as the text says, his mind filled with thoughts of all the amazing things that were keeping his friend from imagining him. So rather than waiting, so this, just this image right here of Beekle, this is considered a salient. It's an image within the big image, and it's kind of a focal. As you can see, he has this beam of light around him, which shows that he is the light. He is bringing in the light. This type of framing really helps readers to focus in on what is happening and the importance of this character and what they're doing. In addition to that, these people are kind of framed in to the idea that they're all kind of breaking up just this starry background. In addition to that photo, we're going to talk about this photo, these three photos. So as you can see, they're all broken up. So this one is framed here, this one is framed here, and this one is framed here in kind of an arch form. So as we look at this, this is really kind of breaking up the text and the images. It is separating them, allowing for a nice flow throughout the book. Also, it is almost a little bit decorative because of the fact that like it looks so fancy, and there's like the shapes are kind of interesting and intertwining. Throughout the book, we talk about the importance of color, and while looking at this photo, it's important to note that the colors of a lot of the folks are very dark. And very sad. And so when we look at Beekle, we see this beam of light again. And so it's this idea of when we look at the framing in this photo, it is this broken up, sectionalized piece of work that this is talking about only adults eating cake. And this section is talking about no one stops to listen to the music. And this one is, and everyone needed nap time. And it's this idea that you slow down a little bit in these parts, which is important to this story particularly because of the idea that it's a semi-fast-paced story as Beekle goes on all these adventures, but when he gets to the real world and he experiences the real world, he sees all these dark things, and having these frames breaking up the flow of the story allows for this lack of connection between the real world and the story. Throughout the whole text up until the part when Beekle gets to the real world, it flows really nicely. There's really no boundaries, but here you really start to see a division. And then to build off of that, we're going to look at this page. Again, this is a seance. As you can see, everyone is here, but there's two things that really, really stick out. This, the sun is beaming right through the trees, and here's little Beekle climbing up the tree to sit down. And then this character. So this is a type of framing because it is dividing up the importance of the characters. Here, Beekle is the central idea, and here she's kind of hiding in the background. She is secluded, and it allows for that seclusion through framing of Beekle as the central point. She is the shadowed point. And then, in addition to that photo, this photo is showing this character's name is Alice, and this is Beekle, obviously, Beekle and Alice. She had drew Beekle's story. This is considered a frame because it's a picture within the picture. The rest of the image is a full bleed, but this part is framed in, and it is absolutely central and important to look at because Alice imagines Beekle, and Beekle then becomes part of the book. So it's important to look at this image because of the idea that the frames around and within it, the frame around is the bleed, and the frame within is this secluded frame. Shows that she did eventually imagine him, giving her paperback, and it allowed for a separation of reality and the text. In addition to that, this section really separates text and image, but in addition to that, it allows for this is what is called framing across. It's the idea of helping the reader to view and seclude. So this section is, at first they weren't sure what to do. Neither of them had a friend before. But after a little while, Alice, they realized, huh? Beekle. I'm Beekle. Hi, Beekle. They were perfect together. So it's the idea that these images are able to help the reader zoom in on what is happening in each of the photos and seclude it to what the words are saying. It separates the text and the visual, but it also allows for the connection between the two of them. And the final image that we're going to be looking at is this image. As you can see, there are many frames that are occurring throughout this page. Overall, the whole page is a full bleed, and a lot of these mini frames are full bleeds as well. But all these little full bleeds are Beekle's story that had occurred elsewhere. So the fact that each of these are things that were central and important to the story, having them here and secluded and broken up shows the importance of Alice then imagining Beekle. overall, framing is a really central idea of the story because it allows for breakup of the text. It allows for the boundary between the story world and the real world to be broken and to grow. It helps the reader view and seclude information, connect and separate what is important and what isn't important. It allows for breaking boundaries or breaking borders between different scenes, as we saw in that one with the people in the restaurant, in the subway. It allows for an easily determined set of words and checks to be broken up. And finally, it allows for important things to stick out more vividly. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed my framing lesson throughout Beekle.